A young black boy, impoverished, approaches a paralyzed millionaire with an offer, "I can heal you if you share your leftovers." She scoffs and everything shifts. "You expect me to trust some slum kid's nonsense?" Emily Bright's voice sliced through the mansion's air, sharp as ice, her steel blue eyes locked on the 12-year-old at the service entrance. Michael Johnson had just dared to make the most audacious proposal of his young life. After 3 days of watching that bitter woman in her wheelchair, throwing away entire plates of food while he and his grandmother starved across the street, he had finally gathered the courage to knock on that door. "Ma'am, I wasn't joking," Michael replied with a calmness that surprised even himself. "I can help you walk again. I just need you to give me the food you're throwing away." Emily let out a cruel laugh that echoed through the marble hall. "Listen here, little boy. I've spent $14 million on the best doctors in the world for the last 7 years. You really think a street urchin like you, who probably can't even read, is going to do what no neurosurgeon could?" What Emily didn't know was that Michael Johnson wasn't just any kid. While she looked at him with utter contempt, he studied every detail of the woman who had become a willing prisoner of her own bitterness. His trained eyes, the result of years of caring for his diabetic grandmother, picked up signs that expensive doctors had overlooked. "You take medicine for back pain every day at 2 in the afternoon, Michael said calmly, watching Emily's face change from mockery to surprise. 3 white pills and 1 blue one. And you always complain that your legs feel cold, even in the heat." "How do you know that?" Emily whispered, her arrogance wavering for the first time. Michael had spent weeks watching her routine through open windows, not out of morbid curiosity, but because he recognized the symptoms his grandmother had exhibited before the surgery that saved her. The difference was that his grandmother had relied on knowledge passed down from generation to generation, while Emily clung only to what money could buy. "Because I see what your expensive doctors don't want to see," Michael replied, keeping his tone respectful despite the hostility. "You don't need more medicine. You need someone who understands that sometimes healing doesn't come from where we expect it to." Emily slammed the door shut, but not before Michael saw something in her eyes that was no longer just contempt. It was fear. Fear that a poor 12-year-old boy had noticed something that all the experts had missed. As he walked back to the small apartment he shared with his grandmother, Sarah, Michael smiled discreetly. Emily Bright had just made her first fatal mistake, completely underestimating someone who had grown up learning that survival required observation, patience, and a wisdom that money could never buy. What that bitter rich woman had no idea was that this slum kid carried the knowledge of 4 generations of healers. And more importantly, he had just discovered exactly what her real problem was. If you're curious to find out how a 12-year-old boy managed to see what millionaire doctors couldn't, be sure to subscribe to the channel, because this story of prejudice and healing will turn everything you think you know about who really has the power to transform lives upside down. 3 days had passed since Emily had slammed the door in Michael's face, but she couldn't shake her uneasiness. How did that boy know about her medications? About the exact time she took them? About the symptoms she had carefully hidden even from Dr. Henry, her private neurologist? The next morning, on May 12, 2024, Emily decided to find out who this cheeky kid was. A call to her personal assistant was enough. Michael Johnson, 12 years old, lived with his grandmother, Sarah Johnson, in the Riverside Gardens housing complex. Father unknown. Mother killed in a car accident when he was 5. Private school scholarship, excellent grades, no criminal record. Typical, Emily muttered, leafing through the report. Just another case of a poor little thing trying to take advantage of the kindness of strangers. But there was something in the report that bothered her. Sarah Johnson, 73 years old, former hospital employee, retired due to disability after severe diabetes. However, medical records showed an inexplicable recovery over the past 2 years, something doctors classified as unexpected and clinically undocumented improvement. Emily dismissed the information as a bureaucratic error. After all, what knowledge could an old black woman from a public hospital have? Meanwhile, across the street, Michael carefully prepared his next approach. Emily's reaction had confirmed his suspicions. She wasn't really paralyzed. At least not in the way everyone believed. "Grandma," Michael said, sitting down next to Sarah on the small porch. "I need you to tell me again about the signs of pseudo-paralysis." Sarah Johnson had worked for 40 years as a nursing assistant, but her real knowledge came from a much older lineage. Her great-grandmother had been a midwife and healer in Mississippi, knowledge passed down from mother to daughter through generations. When doctors told Sarah she had 6 months to live due to complications from diabetes, it was this ancestral wisdom that saved her. "Smart boy," Sarah smiled, her experienced eyes shining with pride. "You saw what I taught you, didn't you?" Her legs tense when she doesn't realize she's being watched. The muscles respond to emotional stimuli. Michael nodded. During his discreet observations, he had noticed how Emily's feet moved unconsciously when she yelled at the staff, how her legs tensed when something upset her deeply. They were almost imperceptible signs, but to someone trained to look for what doctors didn't, they were clear evidence. "She's trapped in her own mind," Michael murmured. "Her body works, but her mind has created the chains." "Exactly," Sarah replied. "Psychological trauma manifested as physical paralysis. I've seen 3 cases like this at the hospital. Rich doctors don't want to treat the mind, only the body. It's easier to give medicine than to heal a wounded soul." That afternoon, Emily received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Henry arrived with the results of new tests she had requested the week before, desperate to find any hope of improvement. "Emily, I need to be honest with you," the doctor said, adjusting his expensive glasses. "These tests show something peculiar. There is neural activity in areas that should be completely inactive. It's as if your nervous system is functioning perfectly." "What does that mean?" Emily asked, her voice tense. "It means that neurologically there is no physical reason for your paralysis. I've suspected this for some time, but now I'm certain." Dr. Henry hesitated. "Have you considered more intensive psychological therapy? Sometimes trauma can manifest itself physically in ways that—" Emily shouted, cutting him off. "Are you saying I'm faking it? That I've spent 7 years in this chair for fun? No, that's not it. Your paralysis is real, but the cause may be psychosomatic." With the right treatment, Emily dismissed the doctor before he could finish his sentence. The truth hurt more than any terminal diagnosis. If her paralysis was mental, that meant she had wasted 7 years of her life hiding behind a self-imposed disability. Worse, it meant that a poor 12-year-old boy had diagnosed in minutes what she had denied for years. That night, Emily found herself staring out her bedroom window, watching the modest apartment where Michael lived. The lights were on, and she could see shadows moving through the cheap curtains. A family living on an income that didn't even cover her monthly medication bill, but who apparently possessed knowledge that all her money couldn't buy. For a moment, Emily felt something she hadn't felt in years: humility. And immediately, she choked it down with renewed anger. "That boy isn't going to humiliate me," she whispered to herself. "I won't let a slum dweller make a fool of me." What Emily didn't know was that at that very moment, Michael was sitting at the kitchen table with his grandmother, carefully planning his next move. He had recognized the type of woman Emily was: too proud to accept help, too rich to value free wisdom, and too hurt to trust anyone. But Michael Johnson had learned a valuable lesson from his grandmother. Sometimes to heal someone, you first have to show them exactly how sick they really are. The following week, on May 19, 2024, brought a radical change in the dynamic between Emily and Michael. The millionaire had decided she would not tolerate being disrespected by a smug brat and began a silent campaign to humiliate the boy publicly. First, she called the private school where Michael was a full scholarship student. "Principal Patterson, this is Emily Bright of the Bright Foundation. I'd like to discuss the inappropriate behavior of one of your scholarship students, Michael Johnson. He has been trespassing on private property and harassing neighborhood residents." The call worked. The next day, Michael was called to the principal's office and warned to stay in his place and not bother the school's benefactors. The threat was clear: one more misstep, and he would lose the scholarship that represented his only path to a different future. Emily also contacted the superintendent of the building where Michael lived, suggesting that disruptive elements were causing discomfort to respectable neighbors. Although he couldn't legally evict them, the superintendent began to make things difficult. Complaints about non-existent noise, threats of fines for imaginary infractions, surprise inspections that always found minor problems. "She's trying to get us kicked out of the neighborhood," Michael told his grandmother, Sarah, as she prepared the herbal tea they drank every night. "She wants us to disappear so she doesn't have to face the truth about herself." Sarah Johnson watched her grandson with experienced eyes. At 73, she had survived decades of institutional racism, discrimination at work, and attempts to silence her. She recognized the patterns of behavior of those who used power and privilege as weapons. "Boy, that woman is afraid," Sarah said calmly. "When rich people are afraid of poor people, it's because they know they've done something wrong. And when they're afraid of the truth, they'll do anything to destroy anyone who can reveal it." "But Grandma, what if she gets my scholarship? What if she gets us kicked out of here?" Sarah smiled with the wisdom of someone who had faced far more powerful adversaries. "Michael, let me tell you a story. When your mother was your age, a white doctor tried to stop me from working at the hospital because I knew too much about treatments he didn't know about. He used all his influence to hurt me. What happened? I did what our family has always done. I observed, I learned, I documented everything. And when the time was right, I used his own knowledge against him. Do you want to know how?" Michael nodded, realizing that his grandmother was about to teach him something fundamental. That doctor had a very important patient, a wealthy businessman who suffered from the same condition I had cured in dozens of poor people. When his expensive treatment failed and the patient was dying, guess who they came to see? You. Exactly. And when I saved that man's life using methods that the arrogant doctor had dismissed, everyone knew who really understood medicine. He lost his position, his reputation, everything. Not out of revenge, but because the truth always comes out. Michael began to understand. Emily isn't just afraid that I can help her. She's afraid that people will find out that she rejected help from someone she considers inferior. "Now you're thinking like a real healer," Sarah smiled. "We don't just heal the body, boy. Sometimes we need to heal the sick soul of an entire society." That night, Michael began meticulous research on Emily Bright. Using the school library's computers, he discovered details that completely changed his understanding of the situation. Emily had not been born rich. The daughter of poor European immigrants, she had married Richard Bright III, heir to a family fortune built on slave labor in the 19th century. The accident that left her paralyzed had happened on March 7, 2003, exactly one day after she discovered that her husband was planning to divorce her for a younger woman. Even more interesting, Richard had died under suspicious circumstances on March 14, 2005, leaving his entire fortune to Emily. The will had been changed on March 8, 2005, when he was hospitalized after a sudden heart attack. Michael also discovered something that explained Emily's particular hostility toward him. The Johnson family had worked for the Brights for generations. His great-great-grandfather had been enslaved on the original plantation. His great-grandmother had been a maid in the mansion, and his grandmother, Sarah, had cared for Richard's mother when she was dying of cancer. But the most revealing detail was in the medical records Sarah had kept secret for decades. Richard's mother had cured herself of terminal cancer using traditional treatments that Sarah had administered. The family doctors never knew the truth, crediting the miraculous recovery to the conventional treatments that were failing. "Grandma," Michael said the next morning, "Emily isn't just physically ill. She's sick with guilt, fear, and shame. Her body is reflecting the prison she has built for her own soul." Sarah nodded proudly. "And now, my grandson, you understand what true healing she needs. It's not just about making her walk again. It's about making her face who she really is and what she's done." "Exactly. But remember, our family has never used our gifts to hurt. Always to heal. Even when the person doesn't deserve it, even when she hates us." Michael spent the rest of the week watching Emily with new understanding. Every cruel gesture she made, every attempt to humiliate him only confirmed his diagnosis. She wasn't paralyzed by physical damage, but by a guilt so deep it had manifested as actual paralysis. The plan that began to form in his mind was audacious and dangerous. It wasn't just about proving he could heal her, but forcing her to confront decades of privilege built on the suffering of others, lies about her own identity, and crimes she had buried under piles of money. Emily Bright thought she was fighting a poor boy who wanted her leftovers. She had no idea she was about to face 4 generations of accumulated wisdom, a lineage of healers who had survived centuries of oppression, and a young man who carried not only the knowledge to cure her, but also the evidence to destroy her completely. While Emily planned her next public humiliation of Michael, the boy smiled quietly, knowing that each act of cruelty from her only confirmed that he had correctly diagnosed not only her physical condition, but also the moral rot that truly held her prisoner. The cure Michael planned would be much deeper than Emily imagined and much more painful as well. The final confrontation took place on a Sunday morning, May 26, 2024, when Emily least expected it. Michael rang the front doorbell for the first time, no longer using the back door reserved for people like him. When Emily opened the door, she found not only Michael, but also Sarah Johnson and a third person who made her blood run cold, Dr. Jessica Willey, the neurologist who had secretly treated Richard's mother years earlier. "Good morning, Emily," Michael said calmly. "I've come to keep my promise. Today is the day you're going to walk again." Emily tried to close the door, but her arrogance betrayed her. "What kind of joke is this? I've called security." "Go ahead," Michael smiled. "They'll want to see this too, especially when they find out who you really are." Sarah stepped forward, carrying an old leather briefcase. Emily Kowalski, daughter of Polish immigrants, born May 19, 1974, married Richard Bright in 2003, 3 months after discovering he was cheating on her. Emily's face paled. No one had known her real name for decades. "The accident that left you paralyzed happened exactly 1 day after you discovered Richard was planning to divorce you," Michael continued. "Very convenient, don't you think?" Dr. Jessica Willey opened a medical file. "I treated Richard's mother when she was dying of cancer. Sarah here was the one who actually cured her, but the family never knew. I kept all the records, including the neurological tests I performed on you after the accident. Your tests always showed normal neural activity," Dr. Willey said coldly. "But you paid me very well to keep that a secret, didn't you? $4.5 million to confirm a non-existent paralysis." Emily staggered, leaning against the door frame. "You can't prove anything." Michael smiled and took a digital recorder out of his pocket. "I can. You know that monitoring system you installed to keep an eye on your employees? It worked very well for recording your phone conversations too." Emily's voice echoed from the device. "Dr. Willey, I need you to stick with the diagnosis. If Richard finds out I can walk, I'll lose everything in the divorce. Keep confirming the paralysis and I'll double your fee." "You recorded my private calls," Emily shouted, her mask of victimhood finally slipping. "Not just the calls," Sarah said calmly. "Michael also documented how you can walk when you think no one is watching. 45 videos over 6 months showing you walking around the house, even dancing when you believed you were completely alone." Michael connected his phone to a portable speaker. The videos began to play, Emily getting up from her wheelchair to reach something high on a bookshelf, walking normally through the garden in the early hours of the morning, even running on the treadmill in her private gym in the basement. "Stop!" Emily yelled, but her own voice on the videos betrayed her, talking normally to staff when she thought there were no witnesses. "There's more," Michael said softly. "Richard's medical records. You altered his will while he was sedated after his heart attack. The same Dr. Willey who confirmed your fake paralysis also falsified your husband's death certificates." Dr. Willey hung her head. "She blackmailed me. She said she would reveal that I had covered up the fake paralysis if I didn't confirm that Richard died of natural causes." "Richard was poisoned," Sarah said with the authority of someone who had seen similar symptoms for decades in a hospital. "Digitalis extracted from the foxglove plant. It kills slowly, simulates a heart attack, and is almost impossible to detect after a few days." Emily collapsed in her wheelchair, realizing that her world of lies was completely crumbling. "You don't understand. He was going to leave me with nothing. I gave the best years of my life to that man. And now," Michael said, "the time has come for the real cure. Get up, Emily. We know you can." "I can't get up," Emily protested, But Michael shouted with an authority that made her jump involuntarily out of her chair, standing up out of pure reflex. For a moment, everyone stood silently staring at the woman who had pretended to be disabled for 7 years, now standing, trembling with rage and fear. "Congratulations," Michael said calmly. "You're cured officially." Sarah approached with new documents. "These are the reports that will be delivered today to the police, the FBI, and the IRS. Insurance fraud, falsification of medical reports, tax evasion, and first-degree murder. We also sent everything to the Washington Post, CNN, and all social media." Michael added, "The story of the fake millionaire paralytic who killed her husband will be national news by tomorrow." Emily looked around desperately. There was nowhere to run, no way to deny what was recorded, documented, proven. Decades of privilege built on lies and blood were crumbling in a matter of minutes. "You know what's most ironic?" Michael asked, helping his grandmother put away the documents. "You'll really be paralyzed now in prison without your millions, without your paid doctors, without anyone to prop up your lies." Police sirens began to approach. Someone had called the authorities, probably a neighbor curious about all the commotion. "The real paralysis," Sarah said wisely, "has always been in your soul, Emily. You paralyzed yourself morally so long ago that you forgot how to live with dignity." As the police climbed the stairs of the mansion, Emily looked at Michael with a mixture of hatred and involuntary respect. "How did a 12-year-old boy manage to destroy my entire life?" Michael smiled with the calmness of someone who had learned that justice sometimes requires patience, observation, and the courage to stand up to those who consider you inferior. "Very simple," he replied. "You completely underestimated someone who grew up knowing that survival requires intelligence, not privilege. And you forgot that sometimes the most powerful remedies come from where we least expect them." In the center of that marble hall, where arrogance disguised as victimization once reigned, a new reality was now taking shape. Like a symphony that finally finds its harmony after years of dissonant notes, proving that true justice knows no color, social class, or limitations imposed by those who confuse money with impunity. 6 months later, on November 15, 2024, the transformation was more dramatic than any Hollywood screenwriter could have imagined. The mansion that once symbolized privilege and arrogance now housed the Sarah Johnson Community Center, funded by Emily's assets, confiscated by the FBI. Michael, at 14, had become the youngest student in Harvard's history with a full scholarship to study medicine. But what made Sarah most proud was that her grandson had turned down dozens of million-dollar offers to give interviews, preferring to continue learning the secrets of generations of healers. Emily, who had once discarded expensive dishes while children went hungry, now shared a 2-square-meter cell in the federal penitentiary. 24 years in prison for first-degree murder would give her plenty of time to reflect on how she had wasted a lifetime building power on lies. The trial had become a worldwide phenomenon. The millionaire fake paralytic, who had fooled the medical system and murdered her husband, became a symbol of how arrogance destroys those who underestimate others. But what really captured the public imagination was the contrast between the wisdom of a 12-year-old boy and the ignorance of a woman who had spent $14 million looking for cures that existed next door. Dr. Jessica Willey, the neurologist blackmailed by Emily, now worked voluntarily at the community center. "Michael showed me that I spent 40 years looking only at machines," she confessed in a national interview. "I forgot that real medicine begins with observing the whole patient. That boy taught me more in 6 months than I learned in decades of expensive specializations." Dr. Henry, who had accepted payments to confirm false diagnoses, lost his medical license and now worked as a pharmacy clerk. It was the perfect irony for someone who had scorned unscientific treatments while participating in a multi-million-dollar medical scam. The Riverside Gardens community had been completely transformed. Children who had once struggled just to eat now dreamed of becoming doctors, scientists, lawyers. Michael had proven that intelligence and determination could defeat any system designed to keep them in their place. Emily did indeed develop problems with her legs in prison. Stress and depression caused genuine muscle atrophy. Now she depended on a wheelchair borrowed from the infirmary, a cheap version that made her old $14,000 chair look like a lost throne. Michael visited her only once. She looked at him through the bulletproof glass with empty eyes, without the arrogance of before. "Why did you come here?" she asked. "To make sure you understood," Michael replied. "I never wanted to destroy you. I just wanted you to stop trying to destroy us. You were just a child. And you were a wealthy adult with all the resources in the world, who really should have known right from wrong." Emily finally understood the magnitude of her smallness. A 12-year-old boy had shown more wisdom and integrity than she had in her entire privileged life. Michael's story became a case study in universities across the country. The Michael Johnson effect forced institutions to recognize that exceptional intelligence comes from everywhere, especially where we least expect it. Programs were created to identify talent in communities traditionally ignored by academia. Sarah continues to run the center, now expanded to 3 floors of the former mansion. She trains a new generation of healers who combine ancestral knowledge with modern science, proving that true wisdom knows no racial or social barriers. Emily became an example in criminology classes about how privilege without character leads to self-destruction. When prisoners ask how a rich woman ended up there, the answer is always the same. She underestimated someone she considered inferior and paid the price for her arrogance. The real lesson is not about a boy who defeated a cruel woman. It's about how our society ignores wisdom when it comes from people who don't fit our preconceptions about who should be smart or worthy of respect. Michael proved that the most powerful healing is not for the body, but for toxic beliefs that prevent us from recognizing value in every human being, regardless of color, origin, or socioeconomic status. If this story of overcoming adversity has touched you, subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that true wisdom comes from the most unexpected places and that the greatest teachers are those the world has taught you to ignore. Emily tried to destroy Michael, but ended up destroying herself. Michael learned that true healing isn't just about restoring broken bodies. It's about transforming minds closed by prejudice into hearts open to recognizing greatness where it truly exists. If this story struck a chord, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs its message, and subscribe for more real-life tales. Leave a comment. Have you ever been judged for where you come from? I read every single one. Until next time, always remember, your worth surpasses anyone's judgment of you.